Welcome to the Black Doctor Collective podcast. We as Black doctors are in a unique position. We can change our communities, healthcare, and the world. Of course, we start by changing the way we see and value ourselves. I'm your host, Dr. Shanika Horn, pediatrician and physician coach, travel extraordinaire. I am so happy to have you here and listening. So let's get into it. Welcome to an episode in season 4 of the Black Doctor Collective podcast. Today is a guest episode. So we have with us today, I'm really excited about this actually, Dr. Mavis Britwum. Okay. She is an activist and a physician, pediatrician specifically. I rock hard for Team Peds. But she's got a passion for social justice, truth and reconciliation, and uplifting the voices and experiences of vulnerable populations. She's a recent graduate from the Pediatrics Residency program at the Children's Hospital of Pittsburgh in Pennsylvania, and will be starting her career. I want to say continuing your career, because you on the way, girl. Continuing her career as a primary care pediatrician in Pittsburgh. Her special interests include breastfeeding medicine, bioethics, and tackling racism in medicine. Girl, that's a feat. Woo! She's a proud first-generation Ghanaian American with deep roots on both sides of the Hudson, originally from the Bronx, New York, and later moved to northern New Jersey with her family. Dr. Bri-CHOOM earned a BA in English with a minor in African American Studies from the College of New Jersey. She later earned her master's in biomedicine from Eastern Mennonite University in Harrisburg, Virginia. Her mission is to inspire and motivate the next generation of physicians from diverse social, economic, and environmental backgrounds succeed in the field of medicine. Welcome, Dr. Mavis. Also, Dr. Mavis is part of the crew, part of the Any Day Negotiator crew.
Yes,
and I talk about
indeed.
all the time on the podcast. So even if you guys think you don't know her, because let me tell you, I talk about her. Okay. So excited to have you. Welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Shanika. This is definitely a huge honor after listening to this podcast for years, or at least definitely within residency. And it's crazy how it's come full circle that I can now be a guest, but it feels really awesome.
Awesome. I'm so glad you're here because I feel like you are such a good example of what it is like to consider your possibilities early in your career and then really advocate for yourself. But we're going to get into that. I don't want to rush the process. I know you. So I want you to just tell the audience a little bit about yourself, your background. I mentioned a little in the bio, but give us the firsthand perspective.
Yeah, sure. This is always a tough question for whatever reason, but I always like to start off with like my background in terms of who I am, because of course our degree is not our identity. So it's part of it, but it's not the full identity. Yeah. So though I am a doctor, I am first generation Ghanaian American, and I'm very proud of that. I have the ability to understand and speak both languages. So my family speaks Tree and they taught me that language. So it's really nice kind of having that background, because when I meet other Ghanaians, they're like, oh, you're American. But I'm like, joke's on you. I can actually understand the language. So definitely that is a huge part of me in terms of who I am, my identity, and just representing my family everywhere that I go. In terms of my background, so I grew up between New York City and New Jersey. That also plays a huge role in who I am, because I'm a homegirl. Like I know what it's like coming from these places, and that also has shaped a lot of who I am and the things that I pursue. And definitely the reason why I am the way I am as a physician in terms of the patient population that I really care deeply for. Of course, I care about all my patients, but definitely for patients who come from places where I came from and really didn't have all those opportunities, that's important for me in terms of representation. I like to roller skate, so I guess I'm interesting in that way. A lot of people roller skate, but that's just something that I tell people, and it's always, oh, really? Okay. But
I skated since I was about 12. So
It's definitely a thing. So whenever you're ready, especially if I'm in New York City, I will definitely call you so we could go roller skating. Shout out Branch Brook in Newark. We'll go there.
I gotta start on my elbow right here from the last
Yeah,
time
yeah,
I went roller skating. I don't know if I'm going back.
yeah.
Listen, the body don't bounce back like it used to, okay? I don't
Listen, I feel you. I know, I know. I have a brace when I go skating on my knees, so I definitely hear you. But yes, as a pediatrician, I must say, please wear your helmet, knee pads, all the things. You already know. Yes. But yeah,
awesome.
that's just a
I
little
love
bit
it.
about me. Yeah, that's a little bit
Yes.
about me.
So good. And I love that you mentioned being first generation, because I think that's so many of us, even if we're not first generation American, a lot of us are first generation doctor in America. Uh,
Yes.
there's just so many layers to that identity, right? And then I think if you're a first generation American like I am, it's like navigating the American system is so different from what your parents knew growing up. And so you are doing things for the first time, both in a new cultural way and then also in these educational systems, trying to navigate that. So there's just a lot of learning to be done when you are first gen.
Yes, yes. And it's a lot of learning that you learn along the way. It's not like someone is teaching you the lesson before you get to the obstacle. You got to see the obstacle, figure out a solution, and then keep it moving. And I think that's really what's important about us. I heard someone talk about it like we're a sandwich generation where you're successful, but you want to help your family that came before you, but also prepare for the next generation if you're trying to build generational wealth. And I was like,
Yeah.
that's exactly how it feels. Is I'm trying to navigate this myself because I didn't have a blueprint from like my parents. My parents were just like, we are going to encourage you to be a doctor, but they don't know what it's like to study for the MCAT. They didn't know what it was like to apply for medical school. They didn't know
Mhm.
what it was like that you could either go straight to medical school from college or deviate a little bit like I did and go to grad school and what that
Mhm.
process is like. All of those things I had to learn and figure out how to talk to people. What help do I need? What help do I need from my parents? And then apply it and
Yeah.
fail or either do well or whatever it is and just
Yeah.
keep it going. So it's definitely layered. And I love how you said that because there's so many different parts of it. It's not just like your ethnicity, it's like all the other things that come with it too.
Yep. Yep. So yeah, I'm like, you just listening to you was making me think back to all the things I was figuring out and then trying to share how complex or
Oh,
significant it was to my family.
listen,
Or it's okay, but this happened, and they're like, "Oh, why don't you?" And they
why don't you
propose
just
a solution that's just like, "Nope, that don't work. No, you don't
nah
understand. This is a big deal." And so crazy. So yeah, ooh, it's just making me have like flashbacks or like
flashbacks? I feel
college,
you.
med school residency, trying to convey the feelings I had. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, you figured it out. You went through medical school. You went through residency. Was it what you thought it was going to be?
Woo. Definitely not. I'm sorry,
That was
I
a
had to
heavy
let that
sigh.
out.
Woo!
Definitely not. And I don't think I really had any clarity of what it could be. I knew it was going to be tough because I had other mentors, or at least like in college, if you were part of the pre med club, you had people who had gone through the process and they would come back and talk to us and they would tell us what it's like. But you really don't know until you go through the process yourself. And
Yeah.
so I thought it was going to be like, okay, once you're in the door, it's like smooth sailing. Like once you get into
Mm.
whatever, medical school is smooth sailing. Once you get into residency, it's smooth sailing. But I literally felt like every step that I took into the next stage of my career, I was hit with a whole set of new obstacles and challenges, which, when you think about it in the long run, the obstacles you went through before, if you were able to get through them, it's going to help you in the next step. So it's not like you're not prepared to handle what's coming your way. It's just that if you've never been through it, you just don't know. You really don't know. And you grow in different ways in the process for sure. So I'm really grateful for some of the things that I've experienced, because I think in general, even just like I said, growing up between New York and New Jersey and the places that I grew up in, you had to be tough. You had to know how to hustle. And sometimes that mentality, people might think, oh, it's just to survive that environment. But no, you can apply that hustling mentality in medicine. In terms
Yeah.
of you being first generation, you don't know that your classmates have like mentors in higher spaces that's getting them through certain doors. And so you got to hustle and find people who can help you as well, but
Mhm.
also find the resources to study for the MCAT, find the resources to do well in your classes. Like it's not just going to come to you. You have to hustle. So those skills that you learn in the hood, don't take it for granted because it's really going to help you survive medicine. And that's been my journey for sure. That's been my journey for sure.
That is so real. First of all, I just remembered that when I was ready to apply for residency, I did a whole GoFundMe because them applications was expensive
Oh,
to get.
yeah,
And
that's
I was
smart.
like, everybody around the way do a GoFundMe. I'm about to do one too.
Yes, that
I
is
thought
so
about that.
smart.
And then the other thing, because I'm also a New Yorker, obviously, and I agree that like there's
Mhm.
a certain amount of grit that you gain just from being in that environment, right?
Mm.
The other thing I think about is like how hard it was for people to hurt my feelings or affect
Mm.
me in the way that I
Yes.
noticed it was affecting like maybe other classmates who had probably had more sheltered life. I was like,
Oh,
you
yes.
like
Oh,
you say
yes.
something to
Ooh.
me, I'm like, yo, mama. Now let's move on. You know, like it just rolls off you because I think
Yes,
in New York,
yes.
trading barbs and trading insults, and I think that's true also in immigrant families because my Caribbean family has
Yes.
tongues to
Ooh.
them. Okay, they can say some words. So I
Yes.
think the combination of New York and being first generation American was like prepared me so beautifully for these like crazy
Yes.
endings that would just be talking out the side of their mouth. And you're just like,
Yes.
whatever, homie. Let me go back because you get me
Literally.
here. You ain't gonna stop me. Like it was very
Yes.
that energy the whole time. But I noticed that was not the same for people who didn't have that background.
Yeah, no, that is, and it's not to say that it didn't affect us when those things would come our way. Like,
Right.
obviously, like anyone, if someone's saying something that's demeaning to you, you'll feel it. But that point about having that like tougher skin, you really do. It shows in different ways because you're able to handle certain things that as soon as you said that, I thought of a story of a co-resident who was worried about someone yelling at her. And I was just like, really? This is about to
Like who
affect your
cares?
whole
Yeah.
day. They yelled at you. Okay, that's the hardest thing you've gone through today, this week.
Yeah.
Child, let me open my book and we could talk about difficult things. And so,
Yeah.
and same way for our parents, it was maybe their way of teaching us how to survive, right? Because they didn't have that time to mull over little things. Like they had other big things to worry about. And so their priority was to make sure that we were in school, getting the best grades and getting the best out of the opportunities that we can get. So we don't really have time to just sit here and complain about,
Who
okay,
hurt your feelings?
who hurt your feelings? Like, and it wasn't even anything to really be upset about. Like, I get it. If it's something that's really, of course, bad, then of course that's not right. But like when it's just something that we're all going through and it's you feel like it's just you, that becomes a problem. I feel like that's where a lot of my co-residents and other people I've seen, like in other spaces like medical school and different places where they would complain about something and it's, oh, okay, that's not a big
Yeah.
deal. I'm not here to judge. I'm just going, I'll be there to support you.
Right. Like, whole story, bro. All right. I'm like, people, that's why people think New Yorkers are mean. We're not mean.
We're not mean.
You just can't take everybody on and you just can't. So when did you start listening to the podcast? You mentioned it was years. What were you searching for? What was going on in your mind when you were like, oh, this is something I want to listen to. This is a community
Yeah.
to maybe consider.
Honestly, I was trying to think about that recently, and I'm not exactly sure what brought me to your podcast. I just know a few years ago, this was probably towards the end, maybe it was like during COVID. So I was still in medical school. And I was just like looking for doctors who were doing different things in terms of building themselves financially. I had learned about the FIRE movement. So that's the Financial Independence Retire
Mm,
Early movement. And
mhm.
then one thing led to another. And then I started seeing other physicians doing things outside of medicine. So it might have been, you know what? It might have been shout out to Dr. Nee Darko on Docs Outside the Box. I don't know if that was around the time that I heard your podcast, but as soon as I saw that you were a wonderful speaker, Black
Oh,
pediatrician, New York City, like all the things, I was like, ooh, I am definitely listening to this podcast. And so, certainly throughout residency, I have been listening to your podcast.
so then you did something that a lot of people don't do, which is, okay, I'm actually gonna get coached about my next step. Like I'm
Yes.
graduating. Because I remember even before, it was probably like a year ago, you were like, when I'm ready, I'm coming to you. You
Yes, yes.
had set your intention around getting
Mhm.
what you wanted at work. And so I just want to like understand what your mindset was when you were like, oh, I'm not going
Mm.
down, I'm going to get what I want to get at work.
Yeah, yeah. I think what really attracted me in terms of what I learned from your podcast were definitely the speakers that you had and hearing their stories and how either a life event changed their perspective, something dramatic or something significant that happened to them that made them realize I want to make a change. And if I don't do that,
Mhm.
I am going to either go down the same path or just things that I don't want are not going to happen. So
Yeah.
that for me was really important because I was like, okay, I recognize that I want to be financially free. I want to learn the skills and the tools that I need to be able to build that life that I'm looking for. I know I don't really know how to do it because I've gone through residency and we didn't really learn these things.
At all.
But there are other physicians, namely Dr. Shanika, who is doing something similar and she has this formula to it. So it was just for me like a blueprint. Like I was trying to create a blueprint as I was going through residency to say, once I'm done, how do I just like, all joking aside, not be a broke pediatrician or a broke doctor, right?
No,
Honestly
that's real.
speaking, you go from one income bracket to the next. And especially if you've never seen this amount of money at one time before, how do you manage that? How do you like come to it with a good mindset and not just work, but
Yeah.
work smart, work hard, and also build wealth at the same time. And so a lot of the discussions that you have with people on your podcast, it was just like, oh, this is exactly the type of conversation that I wish I could have with people around me in my like vicinity. But it's okay. I can still hear the stories through your podcast and learn about it and then maybe one day actually try it. But I think the first thing is recognizing that you need that help. So how are you going to get that help? And that was for me the question that I wanted answered. If I want this help in this particular area, how am I going to get there?
Yeah.
So let me try the coaching course and see if it helps.
Yeah. That's awesome. So you want to share with the people your kind of your coaching journey so far, like what you've been able to accomplish?
Yes, of course. So we were just talking about this, but I do think there were so many things that
Yeah.
you really helped me realize that I didn't even recognize was part of the coaching course and the negotiation. But I think the biggest thing in everything is first adjusting your mindset. So you can learn all the things and people can give you all the skills, all the tools, whatever. But if your mindset is not set on how to negotiate well or how to ask questions, even just that process alone, it won't work. You have to position yourself. And I really appreciated that in the beginning of the coaching course, we started there. What is your mindset? What's that fear that creeps in and stops you from asking a very uncomfortable question, quote unquote, but then realizing later that it was a question that either was a yes or no answer, and now you have your answer. I thought that was something that I really needed to work through because I know personally going through this medical journey, there were many moments where it just felt imposter syndrome creeps in, but it manifests in so many different ways. It's not just in the way you study or how you think of yourself when you're presenting on rounds, but it even can manifest when you're negotiating a contract where you feel like, who am I to ask for a 50K bonus? Who am I to ask for 4 days of a work week? Like All of those
Yeah.
things are driven or stopped by some kind of fear because you don't even think or know that you can do that. And so I was like, oh, wow, it's crazy when you just shift your mind what you can do from just knowing that.
Yeah. I have to say, first of all, kudos to you because one thing about you is like when I tell you or when I show you, like, oh, but this is what's happening, you're like, snap, that is what's happening. Course correct. Like you were very quick to be like, bet, got that. Let me go forward and do what I got to do. And I think that
Mhm,
is really what made you successful. So some of the things you hinted at were like, you decided to go into part-time and not full-time. So you are going to do four
mhm,
days a week instead of five, which is an
mhm,
audacious thing for a lot of physicians
mhm.
as
Yeah.
and you're like me, like I did that straight out of training. I never went full time. And
Mhm,
so people don't think that's an option. And it
mhm.
for you, it was like, oh, that's an option? Cool. Let me go ahead and add, right?
Yep.
Oh, I can do that? Cool. So for you, it was like you just wanted to see the possibilities. And then we tackled some of the fear and some of the things that popped up for you. But generally speaking, I think you were already, maybe because you've been listening and thinking about this for some time, I feel like when you started, you already had the desire to create
Mhm,
something really good. So maybe you heard all these stories, my podcast or Docs Outside the Box or any of these other
mhm.
things that you were just looking and being like, oh, if this is what they did wrong, I don't want to also do that. So let me figure
Yeah.
it out in advance.
No, that's definitely part of it for sure because and as you were saying that, for some reason, I went back to that mindset of that hustler mentality. If you know that you're looking for something and you have the ability, you have access. That's the thing about us as physicians. We're really good learners, so you can learn. But the part that gets us sometimes is that we don't actually put it into action. Like we'll want another course to teach us another thing or
Yes.
another
In
course to
perpetuity, though.
yes.
Like amount of research, like we love a research phase, but we will stay
Listen,
there far too long.
find articles, take notes, and it's
Articles,
like,
blogs, podcasts, books. We want to go to
yeah,
conferences. We want to get
right.
extra certificates, degrees,
Network.
like network. We want to do 50, 11 things before we
Yes.
make that step. And that is very much to me a symptom of medicine because you want to be
Yes.
sure, obviously, and medicine is evidence-based. So we
Hmm,
love
hmm.
evidence. And all of our validation comes through titles and degrees and all of that stuff. So I think, like you said, we lean into that a lot, sometimes
Hmm.
to a fault.
Yeah. Agreed. And I think the part of it that maybe for me, it was just not being afraid to take a chance. And so,
Mhm.
and recognizing that I'm taking a chance on myself. This is an investment on me. And that's one of the, it's not, but it is one of the best investments you can make. So if you believe in your potential, if I could make it this far in medicine with the small amount of resources I had to begin with. So that mentality again is that if my mom always says this, if the opportunity is just a small window, you can push that window open more and get yourself through. You don't wait until somebody comes and push it for you because that's not going to happen. And so that sort of like putting these words and these skills and all the things into action, that's always been my journey, like from the very beginning, because there's not a lot to work with from the jump. So you need to learn how to be creative, use the information that you got. If you heard it in conversation that somebody has this mentor, keep that for yourself and go find a mentor because somebody else has it and it's working for them. And if you think you need it, then go out and get it. Maybe that's that go out and get it attitude. Maybe that's what I'm saying. Being a hustler and being a go getter, I think is two very important points. And it really did show up in this process of going through this negotiation course.
Yeah, I think I want to ask you the what surprised you about creating what you wanted in this negotiation process.
Mm,
I
that it was
have like
actually
things
possible.
in my yeah, but I have two things in my mind that you have said to me in previous calls that I'm going to mention. But I just want, as you
Ah,
reflect, I just want to know what you, when you're thinking about it. Yeah, oh,
mm.
that's possible. What was, I guess, what's the possibility that you didn't know existed before?
Whew, that is a really good question. I think the biggest thing that stands out to me is the way employers recruit, in that they really, when they really want you, they will do what they need for you.
Thank you. That
Which,
was actually one of the ones I was going to bring up.
oh, okay, great.
Yeah.
Yeah, because again, it goes back to that mentality of, oh my God, will you just accept me, please? Like that process that we went through with residency and medical school, going through the match system, we're always at the mercy of some mystical being deciding our fate and where we end up. But now you have the ability to create a vision for yourself and enact that vision. And so I was really skeptical. Okay, these jobs are not really going to just heed to my demands or my questions. They're just going to be like, yeah, girl, this is the salary, take it or leave it, goodbye. And mind you, some places they were like that. But the places that really do want you, they were like, okay, what else can we do? Can we meet you
Mhm.
halfway? Can we do this? And it really just sparked from asking that question. I didn't even know I could ask some of these questions. So that was such a huge like eye opener for me. Like when you walk through the door, knowing or understanding your value, you really, the sky is the limit in a lot of ways. And this is just even my first job. This is not like, who knows if this is going to be where I stay for a long time, but those skills that I've learned are definitely going to be with me. And I love how during the podcast you talk about how it's not just during the beginning part, like in the interview, you can use these skills every day at work. And so I'm excited to see how it comes up for me as I'm practicing as well.
Yeah. So just a couple things to highlight is you talked a little bit about that feeling. You talked about feeling like the fear, but also this feeling of I just need to accept whatever I'm giving because I'm so lucky to be here. I'm so grateful.
Hmm.
I just want them to choose me. And so I talk about this a little bit on the podcast, but there is like an actual activity, like there's things that we do, right? Because we do some belief
Oh,
work and
yes.
we action work. Both of those two processes are like helping you identify what that belief is, the feeling of I should be grateful. And then once you
Hmm.
decide what that is, also carrying that forward into then how do you act if you are now aware of this and you want to change that belief. So there's in that process. And then there's the process of I literally give you pages of questions that you should be thinking about and considering, play with what you want to know about that job. So just for the people listening, when you are talking about, I didn't even know these questions were things I could ask. This is kind
Hmm.
of some of what we're referring to is like there's literal actual questions that we go through that are like, you need to be asking this, right?
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
So the reason I thought about the example you gave, which is that the people who really want to work with you will do things like will accommodate you is because I remember when your HR person called you when she was done work, like on her way home or like at home.
Yep.
And she was like, "Oh, I didn't get a chance to call you, but let's chat." And you were so surprised that she was willing to do this on her own time, like after hours, to answer your questions. I remember
Hmm.
that call.
Yes, thank you for reminding me of that because that was a real point where I was just like, wow. I mean, it also gives you the space to see like how they respond to you. And that's also a way of seeing and observing whether or not this place is good for you. Like, do you want people who are just like, okay, we'll respond 10 days later, 2 days later, or whatever, 2 weeks later, and then not really answer your question? Or do you want people who are dedicated to really making sure that all the needs that you're looking for, even if they can't meet you, that they're communicating with you and they're being as upfront as possible, which that to me was really important because I know I held a certain level of skepticism when it came to this process. And I was just like, yeah, whatever. They're not really interested. But it did definitely show in different ways the levels that people will go to to make sure that they are getting what they want, which is a good physician to come on board to their team. The other thing that I didn't want to forget about was, and this is maybe nerdy, but once I understood the skeleton and the inner workings of a contract, it was actually, strangely enough, fun to read the contract. And I have to
I
credit you
remember that.
Yes, I was like, oh my God, I understand these contracts now. And so even pairing them side by side, like I understood what they were trying to communicate because contracts are boring. The language is not normal. It's almost trying to give the everyday person a research paper to read. And it's no, they don't understand what methods mean or what conclusion and discussion and whatever. But
Yeah.
in the contract, it's like such a different language. But again, it's that mentality of knowing that I can learn anything. So why would I limit my brain to really understanding what this means? And this is for me. This is what they're telling me I have to do, or this is the agreement that we have. So I better understand this, or else I'm just walking into here like a fool, just to be honest. And
Yeah.
so when I hit that point, that was very surprising to me because I never thought I would be the person sitting here, oh my God, I'm so excited to understand this contract.
Yeah, for sure. I remember you were like, this is actually fun. I was telling my boyfriend, this is fun. Like, what is what is this like feeling? And that it's funny because a lot of people come, oh, I want to be confident in negotiating and I want to be, and I was like, I don't know if confidence would be the thing that I'm like, yes, be confident. I think you
Hmm.
want to be like actionable. And I think
Yes,
you
yes.
want to feel like it has purpose. And so for you, you're like, this is for me. This affects me. This is how it's going to affect my life. And so understanding the purpose makes you very certain about how you're going, like about asking questions and how you're going to ask and what you're willing to
Hmm.
compromise on. And I guess the confidence comes, I think the confidence honestly comes after, like after you've negotiated
Hmm.
things and you're like, yeah, baby, I did that. But
Right,
you cannot wait for confidence to start asking questions. You cannot wait
right, right.
until like
Yes, that's a
you're
good one.
confident to start reading or trying to understand. Like the confidence is a bonus,
Mhm.
really.
Yeah, and it develops over time. That's a really good point because confidence, if you wait for it, then you're not. I probably wouldn't even applied for the coaching program because in my
True.
mind, I would have been like, oh, I'm not at that point yet. I'm not attending yet. A lot of her clients are probably mid-level, blah, blah, blah. I'm just a resident. I just started. Like all of those things would have stopped me from even just taking that first step and saying, nope, this is for
Oh,
me. I want to get better. So I have to see where my points, my weakness points are and seek that help. But I did not have the confidence at that time. I was like, oh my
yeah.
God, what am I doing?
You're like, this is crazy. I don't know.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think that is like one of the important reflections is people think that they need to have the confidence first, which is weird in medicine because none of us were confident going into medicine.
Right.
Thought we
Hmm.
could doctor coming out the bat. Yeah, we
Hmm.
thought, okay, maybe I can do this. But we were definitely not, I am confident. Even coming out of medical school, you did 4 years to learn how to become a doctor. We were not confident at the end of medical
Not at
school.
all. Not at all.
I had all these papers and my little clipboard,
Right?
and I was trying to like
Trying to be
organize and
perfect.
write electrolytes in the margin, my senses, and like
No.
there's no
Nope.
confidence. Like now I've been in practice for X amount of years. Now I'm
Yep.
like, oh yeah, okay, such and such. And like
Right.
confidence happens after you've done the thing. So yeah, I just think that's yeah, another good observation. Yeah, those were the things I was gonna say. Like I think that surprised you. I think one other thing, I guess the third thing I would say is along the lines of what you said before about the possibilities. And I remember there was like, you were like, oh, the contract was what, 3 years initially, I think.
Mhm.
And you were like, and I don't know, maybe it could be shorter. And I was like, yeah, just ask. And you were like, oh, yeah,
Mhm.
I guess I should ask. And then you asked, right? And they were like, yeah,
Mhm.
we can cut it back. And you were like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Like, and so sometimes it was just that moment of, oh, this is what I want, but, and it was like learning to stop yourself before the but. And
Yes.
this is what I want. Let me
Hmm.
ask. And so I feel like you were asking things pretty early on. Like you were like, oh, I read this thing and I did the thing and I asked for this. And so I feel like that
Hmm.
one of your moments where you were like, oh, but I can just ask. A
Yes.
lot of concessions and a lot of like additional benefits because you were like, let me just ask. Let me just throw that
Hmm.
up.
And that's is again, you can apply that concept to medicine because I even think about when I started residency, there were a lot of things that because I didn't want to be seen as, again, I'm a Black resident, you're in a more predominantly white space, and you don't want to be seen as like, why are you always asking questions? Don't you know that answer? Seen as the one who is slow or behind. And so it limits your ability to just ask the question and be and just learn if you don't know, but ask it in a way that's I recognize that I need some help and I don't have the answer, so I'm just asking. Even like just that process alone, for some reason, feels like it's a weapon against us. And I wonder if maybe that is probably the reason why in different parts of our lives it becomes a problem too, because when you're going through this process in medicine, maybe you were weaponized for asking a question or speaking up. And so you don't really you never learn how to feel comfortable being uncomfortable
Yeah.
until you're pushed out of that space and then you're like, oh, this is not that bad. Like the worst they can say is no. All
Yeah.
right. And then you keep it moving.
Yeah.
Simple.
Yeah. No, you're right. It's so good because I find that a lot of the lessons we learned in training and a lot of the messages that we were told transfer forward.
Yes.
So
Yep.
they transfer
Hmm.
into us becoming attendings, but then they also penetrate the other parts of our lives.
Yes.
So
Hmm.
I see things that I learned in medicine that are really not functional for like other relationships I have, like whether it's
Hmm.
friendships or like relationship with my boyfriend or whatever. But that concept of I always got to be certain, I always got to research, I got to do
Hmm.
the safest thing really can be limiting overall.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
just the power of unlearning that, even in this process, just even starting to unlearn and shift out of that identity is huge.
Hmm. That is the key right there. And it's funny because we didn't get here being the opposite of being afraid, or we got here because we pushed outside of the comfort zone, right? That we're first generation. We were just talking about that in the beginning of the episode, that in order to get here, we needed to do things that were unconventional. We needed to think outside the box. We needed to be hustlers. We needed to be go-getters. And so why, when we get to this point, for whatever reason, we learn it in a different way. And like you said, it becomes limiting where you're afraid to ask questions, you're afraid to speak up. It's not, and those were things that I think I started to see very early on, as early as medical school, that I said, I have to change this or else it's going to get worse. To me, that's what I felt. That it would get worse. I would limit myself in ways that I'm not even realizing, but I see that apart from the education that I'm getting, the life skills to be able to navigate in different ways is I need something else because I made it this far with homegrown, like the things that I learned on the streets, the things that I learned at home, but how to do it on a level where I'm scaling, not just on a professional level, but also like my finances. Like you said, it seeps into other things, your relationship with friends, your family, romantic relationships. All of this is applicable in just literally everything. And that to me was the most important thing, was like, I'm not just seeking help in one specific area, but I love that this is something that can be literally applied to my whole life. Like I can do this at any time and anywhere.
Yeah. Oh, so fun. So fun. It is, we're not even finished. We have so many things that we're going to do together. But this is just like the tip of the iceberg, right? This is the beginning.
Hmm.
What do you see yourself, because we're going to wrap soon, but I do want to know, what do you see yourself doing now that you're becoming an attending? What are some of the things that you're interested in working on or potentially entertaining?
Yeah, now that I have bought back some of my time,
Yeah.
I hope to definitely start a business of some sort. I've always been interested in entrepreneurship. And so for me, I think being a physician and an entrepreneur, they go hand in hand. I'm interested in a lot of different things. Like I said, roller skating. So who knows, maybe I'll start like some organization where I can teach kids how to be active and go out there and also just being in our culture. Listen, our culture has a lot of fun stuff that is also solutions to some of the bigger problems. And that's what I really see is like the way that we approach things, the way that we think about things, especially with the things that you're doing. That's like an example for me to be able to pursue the things that I'm interested in. So I don't really have a really clear definition of what it looks like, but I do have like my sayings where I talk about like new era of hood doctors, which is just my way of saying this is me. Like I came out of places where some of my patients are coming out of. And I'm proud of what that has shaped me to becoming. And I just want to be able to just put on that identity as a physician and make it into something, make it a movement. I don't know, something, but yeah.
Yes, definitely. Also trademark that. Thanks.
I sure
Um,
will.
yes, second thought. Um, yeah, I love that. I just love just the concept of because you have time, you can do any of it. Like it's so funny. We often think about working part-time as sometimes it feels a little selfish to not be working full time or to not
Hmm.
much as you could. And people are like, what would I do with my time? And it's everything you just listed.
Yes,
It's still other things that you get, like things you could be doing for yourself, the things you're still doing for your community, and just really enriching both your life and the lives of others. That's what you're going to do with your
exactly. And take care of me. You're right. Yep.
life. Okay, y'all. So if you want to follow Dr. Mavis on the gram, that's where she's at. Tell them
Yes.
your handle so they can watch your journey.
Yes, my handle is at Dr. underscore Mavis underscore the Great. Simple as
Yes.
that.
Yes. We'll drop that in the show notes. We'll have it on the YouTube notes as well. So you can click and you can follow Dr. Mavis as she starts her new career, as she moves into entrepreneurship, and just keep a track of all the fun ways she's doing it. And hopefully it'll also give you permission that no matter where you are in your journey, it's not too early, it's not too late. You can
Mhm.
get the things that you want out of your work and then more importantly, out of your life. So
Yes, definitely.
that's all we have for y'all today. Any last words, Dr. Mavis?
Just believe in yourself. You can do it. It's very possible. Others have done it before us. We're coming in with new solutions and just believe in yourself. And that's it. Have fun along the journey too. That's something else. Have
Please do.
fun. Take care of yourself. And yeah, that's it.
Yay. Thank you. It's been such a pleasure having you. And
Same
I'm sure we
here.
could even do another episode in the future where you let us know what's
Oh, I'm
developed.
definitely down. Yes,
Right.
yes,
Let's
for
do that.
sure.
Let's make plans for that. All right.
Yes.
All right, everyone. Until next week. Bye. Thank you so much for listening. Please subscribe to the podcast. And what I want you to do next is link us everywhere you can. Instagram at The Black Doctor. Just become part of our collective. I want you here. Thanks. Until next time. Bye.